Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
These powerful political posters called out police violence in LA and beyond. Before political memes ruled supreme in our current age of social media slacktivism, political posters offered artists a tangible expression of empathy or outrage. It's true that political graphics are more ubiquitous than ever, as everyone from outspoken politicos to your great-aunt in Iowa can plaster their Facebook feeds with ideological images that urge action, or, at the very least, that frowny face emoji. These digital memes are a far cry from the posters activists would silk screen by hand and then we paste across the city during covered, after midnight missions. But now more than ever, there's power in pictures. As the recent protests in Ferguson, the Women's March, and actions against police violence have shown, an effective image is worth 1,000 tweets. This weekend, the Center for the Study of Political Graphics shares a selection of 75 posters from its archive of more than 90,000 images, which addresses the issue of police violence over the last few decades. The bilingual exhibition, To Protect and Serve? 5 decades of posters protesting police violence, will be shown at the historic Social and Public Art Resource Center, SPARC, in Venice, which has offered insight into politically engaged art since the 1970s and has been an essential space to showcase the often ephemeral messaging that accompanies times of great social upheaval. From the recent actions against officer-involved shootings to the 1970 death of Angelino journalist Ruben Salazar, who was killed by police during protests against the Vietnam War, the posters display a wide variety of graphic design elements to call attention to the ways the powers that be wield deadly force. For these graphic designers, art can also be a weapon of resistance. A poster can't stop a bullet, but an idea can change the world. We recently caught up with Carol Wells, director of the Center for the Study of Political Graphics, who shared some of the stories behind the protest posters on display at SPARC from December 16 through March 2, 2018. The exhibition kicks off with an opening reception on Saturday from 6 to 9 p.m. One Dereliction of Duty, 1992. By Mickey Wheatley, Queer Nation. Daryl Gates took an aggressive, paramilitary approach to law enforcement years prior to becoming chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, 1978 to 1992. In 1967, Gates was in charge of the tactical planning for the now infamous Century City demonstration against the Vietnam War, where police on motorcycles attacked thousands of peaceful protesters with billy clubs. In 1970, Gates organized the first SWAT squad in the U.S. It was first used to attack the Black Panther Party. In 1992, Gates was forced to resign following the civil unrest which erupted in response to the acquittals of the police officers who had been videotaped beating unarmed African American motorist Rodney King. 2 Official Olympics Police State, 1984. By Fireworks Graphics. This poster directs attention to the intensified militarization of the LAPD and the coordination of many branches of law enforcement, both local and federal, that took place prior to the 1984 Olympics. This was allegedly in response to later discredited reports that Los Angeles faced a threat of terrorist action during the Games. But the primary reason was to suppress potential domestic unrest during the Olympics due to poverty, unemployment, and displacement. Police militarization accelerated the mass arrest and incarceration of African American and Mexican American men that continues to this day. The militarization of law enforcement was never reversed, and the proposed 2028 Los Angeles Olympics will provide another opportunity to expand the use of military weapons and tactics against the civilian population. 3N Stop and Frisk, 2012. By United Healthcare Workers East. Stop and frisk is a policing method carried out by the New York Police Department, NYPD, based on what is called reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Others call it racial profiling. In 2011, 84% of those stopped by the NYPD were Black or Latino, yet they only make up 23% and 29% of the general population respectively. Multiple class action suits have been filed in response to this obvious racial profiling. A January 2013 court ruling deemed elements of stop and frisk to be a violation of the Fourth Amendment. This poster was created for the Silent March, held in June 2012, when thousands marched to demand an end to the criminalization of their communities. This silent and peaceful procession ended when NYPD officers pushed and corralled protesters for not complying with an order to disperse. For Ruben Salazar, 1974. By Los Cinco. Ruben Salazar was a pioneering writer and journalist for the Los Angeles Times and KMEX-TV. He had been working on a story about police abuse, highlighting how local government seemed intent on ignoring all the complaints and violations involving police encounters with Mexican Americans and African Americans. He had been receiving death threats, and the LAPD warned him to stop the stories. After covering the National Chicano Moratorium March in East Los Angeles on August 29, 1970, Salazar and two friends stopped for a beer at the Silver Dollar Bar. LA County sheriffs surrounded the bar, allegedly looking for a man with a rifle, who had actually been caught hours before. A sheriff's deputy fired two 10-inch tear gas projectiles into the bar to make the occupants leave. The missile tore through Salazar's head, killing him instantly. His body remained there for more than 2 hours. No indictments were ever made. 5. End Police Brutality, 2015. By Alicia Nauta. 3 flags, 3 slogans, but all with the same demand: end police brutality. The top statement is, unfortunately, timeless, and has been used whenever police abuse takes place. The other two can be connected with specific moments in time. No justice, no peace has been in use since the 1970s or 80s, but became the primary slogan associated with the 1992 civil unrest following the acquittals of the police officers who were videotaped beating Rodney King, an unarmed African American, a year earlier. The Black Lives Matter movement began in 2013, after George Zimmerman was acquitted for fatally shooting Trayvon Martin. It became nationally recognized following the 2014 deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Garner in New York City. It is now an international movement, and involvement in Black Lives Matter can be found from the UK to Australia and Canada, where this poster was made.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
County. This is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, you know, at least I can do it, you know, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.